No, we invited him to Washington, and he came and bawled his eyes out and got a state visit and stayed at the White House, and we told him we loved him, and we flew Kuwaiti flags all up and down Pennsylvania Avenue, and he was okay.
HW's back there like, what a pussy.
HW, I have to say. And so as they're trying to flee Kuwait on the Iraq-Kuwait highway, it became known as the Highway of Death. We're hitting them from the south, from Khafji, and we're hitting them from the north, from Iraq.
Isn't that how they got Scipio Africanus back in the day?
Yeah.
Might have been.
Yeah.
I hope I got that one right. Correct me in the comments.
And we killed everybody. Everybody.
200,000 soldiers in their military, though.
Wiped out.
Wiped them out.
Mm-hmm. The only ones that Saddam kept behind were the Republican Guard, which was the special forces, and what was called the Special Republican Guard. They were members of Saddam's own family who were the final ring of security around him.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now here's the trillion-dollar question. Given that they had taken such an act of aggression at the time, tried to take an entire sovereign nation, and then given that we had to send the full force of our military in, we mopped the floor with them in like 3 days. Mm-hmm. Now that we're already there and already engaged and we've already knocked these people out, why did HW not finish the job and leave it for Cheney and Dub?
He was very clear at the time that if he were to order American forces to continue north, we would lose the Egyptians and the Syrians, and that would make the coalition fall apart. It was a diplomatic miracle that we got the Syrians to agree to go in with us. And the Egyptians, that was a pretty big deal too. Although we were traditionally close to the Egyptians. And the Jordanians asked us, please don't do this. Half of our population is Palestinian refugees. We can't afford Iraqi refugees to come too. Mm. But that decision, while it was the right decision, was coupled with a bad decision. And that was to do nothing to protect Iraq's Shia Muslims in the south. We ended up having these no-fly zones in the south and the north to protect the Shia and the Kurds. But then the big scandal at the time was it never occurred to us to also ban helicopters. We had banned fixed-wing aircraft from flying over the no-fly zones. We didn't say anything about helicopters. And so Saddam...
There's a distinction?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Rotary wing and fixed wing. And so Saddam sent every helicopter he had to just wipe people out.
Wow.
And we were like, ooh, we wish there was something we could do about that. And so it just dragged on year after year after year.
Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But we pull out, though. And you're still like a young-ass analyst here.
Yeah,
and you were just tossed into the middle of this. You said you were sent to Saudi Arabia when this went down?
Yeah, in September. And then I went back to headquarters. Then I went back to Saudi Arabia in February of 91, and I went into Kuwait City with the Marines on Liberation Day.
Okay. So I'm just trying to understand this from the outside based on what your full job description is here, because you're coming in as an analyst. So when you're brought in to do that, it's not meaning like, ooh, go out in the field under an assumed name or something. To be
no.
spy.
I was John Kiriakou, the CIA guy.
Right.
And so I was doing things like, one of the most important things that I did when I was in Taif is I wrote a cable back to headquarters, and I said, I think the Emir is having a nervous breakdown, which is going to be a serious problem for us when it comes time to coordinate military action with the Kuwaitis. The Emir...
What made you think that? Yeah.
Because all he wanted to do was tend to his rose garden. And anytime you try to talk to him, he would just mumble nonsense.
Shell-shocked.
One of the things I learned with these psychiatrists that were in the office was there is no such thing as a nervous breakdown. That's just a colloquialism that we've come up with to describe any number of mental episodes. And so we decided not to deal with the Emir anymore. We're going to deal directly with the Crown Prince. And the Crown Prince had his shit together.
I want to make sure I'm understanding this. The Emir, you're talking about Kuwait.
Yes.
The Crown Prince, are you talking about Saudi?
Kuwait.
Of Kuwait.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were all in exile in Saudi Arabia, in the city of Taif.
So the Crown Prince is supposed to be lower than the Emir?
Yeah, the Emir is the king.
Okay.
In Arabic, the word Emir is prince. But for all intents and purposes, it's king. In fact, the Emir of Bahrain changed his title to king
Okay.
recently.
So is that like, did that cause a problem though? Because you were going around the king?
No, we invited him to Washington, and he came and bawled his eyes out and got a state visit and stayed at the White House, and we told him we loved him, and we flew Kuwaiti flags all up and down Pennsylvania Avenue, and he was okay.
HW is back there like, what a pussy.
HW, I have to say, I'm a lifelong lefty, but I had mad respect for HW.
Really?
I did.
Why?
He really knew what he was doing.
What makes you say that?
There's a famous story from the day after the invasion. Margaret Thatcher, who was the Prime Minister of the UK, called him and said, quote, now's not the time to go wobbly, George. And that's what sort of bucked him up. But one of the reasons why I have such respect for him is that he surrounded himself with very smart people. They made mistakes, like everybody makes, but for the most part, they really did use diplomacy. When W became president, we had this ongoing joke at the agency that we had never seen an administration work so hard to not talk to people as the George W. Bush administration.
It's ironic, though, because a lot of the people that were put in his administration
were the same people. Yeah. Dick Cheney and Don Rumsfeld being two of the worst shapeshifters that I've ever seen in Washington. You know, Cheney was a tough guy when he was the Secretary of Defense. And I remember once he complained to the Washington Post because they described him in an article as a moderate Republican. And he wanted a retraction. He said, I'm not a moderate. I'm a conservative. And that should have been a warning for the rest of us.
Yeah, he's one of those guys, like, I mean, the first word I think of with him is evil. I can't see
he's evil.
I can't see anything that he did, and I won't even, and I've gone through a lot of his other history too, but I won't even go back there. I will say everything he did as vice president and on.
Yes.
You know, you talk
pure evil.
Yeah, I mentioned all these special forces
Without
guys
a
that
doubt.
came through here and fought in those wars.
Yeah.
It's the first, doesn't even the ones of them that are like conservative, first words out of their mouth when they talk about it, Dick Cheney.
He was perfectly happy to send you to your death. For no discernible policy reason.
Did you ever spend any time with him one-on-one or in a small setting?
In a small setting, yeah, several times.
What was that like?
It was educational. And I'll give you an example. The day before we invaded Iraq in 2003, it was our final meeting.
Oh, you were in there with him.
Oh, yeah, I was the note taker for George Tenet. So we were in the... at the time, I was the executive assistant to the CIA's deputy director for operations. And so my job was to sit quietly against the wall and take notes. So we had the final principals committee meeting the night before the invasion. And the meeting's chaired by Dick Cheney. So it's Cheney and his note taker, Condi Rice and her note taker, Colin Powell and his note taker. Who else was there? The head of NSA, the commander of CENTCOM, General Tommy Franks, the chairman and vice chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and us. And so George is sitting at the head of the table like I am right now, right? And there's a microphone right here. And I'm sitting directly behind him. We're the only two people in the room. And so,
it's like straight out of The Godfather.
This is one of the most intense things that I've ever experienced in life, not just at my CIA career. So George is sitting there. And remember, the CIA is a policy support agency. It's not a policy agency. So whatever they're planning here, we have no say-so in it. We provide the intelligence to allow them to make a decision. In a perfect world, that's the way it's supposed to work. Yes.
Right, yeah.
So they had made up their mind. They're gonna invade Iraq. They're gonna kill Saddam Hussein. In fact, you know what? I'm going to interrupt myself here and say 6 months earlier when I got this job, I had just come back from Pakistan. I was the chief of counterterrorism ops in Pakistan. Yes. So I go my first day and I said, so what are we doing? I said to the deputy director. And he says to me, I actually can't tell you what we're doing.
Did you say it just like that?
I did.
Yeah. Sounds right.
So he goes, you need to go up to the 6th floor, sign your secrecy agreements, and then come back down here, and then I'll tell you what we're doing. I said, okay. So I go upstairs, 6th floor, which is Near East Operations, or at least it was way back then. And
thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description below.